On this episode of Cape Media News, Attorney General Maura Healey visits the Cape. Harwich voters approve a multi-million-dollar wastewater plan. We'll take you inside active shooter training in Yarmouth, and artists, scientists, and crafters show off their stuff at the annual Cape Cod Mini Maker Fair. These stories and more, this is Cape Media News. This is Cape Media News, your local authentic newscast for Cape Cod. I'm Sarah Colvin. We begin in Yarmouth, where two children were taken from their parents during a stay at a West Yarmouth motel. Two children are under the protection of the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families after they were taken away from their intoxicated parents at a West Yarmouth motel Monday. Police arrived at the Stepnesset Village Motel just before 5:30 p.m. on a report of two small children running around outside the motel alone. The parents were found in their motel room. Police say they were severely under the influence of alcohol. The children, aged 6 and 8, were transferred to the custody of DCF. Police are investigating, and the parents will be charged with child endangerment. A truck driven by a teenager crashed into a bus carrying elementary school students in Sandwich Tuesday afternoon, sending 5 people to the hospital. That crash happened near 34 Quaker Meeting House Road. A portion of the road was closed for about an hour following the crash. The 17-year-old driver of the truck, his 14-year-old passenger, and 3 students on the bus were taken to Cape Cod Hospital. Members of the Yarmouth business community underwent an active shooter training this morning at Yarmouth Police Headquarters.
It's important to make sure that people empower that in the event that something happens, they have the tools to react properly. So in the presentation, we talked about going through the process of recognizing that there is a problem, having a plan in place to deal with that problem. So avoiding the attacker, denying access to wherever they're trying to get into, and then defending yourself. We can't predict where the things are going to happen, and we know historically that they just happen all over the place. So we're just trying to educate the public to be as safe as possible, have good situational awareness, and in the event something happens, they have the tools to respond properly.
Coming up next, Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey makes a stop on Cape Cod.
Cape Cod Cares for the Troops presents the 13th Annual Troops in the Spotlight 24-hour event. Sunday, May 28th. Opening ceremony is 11:30 a.m. at the Kmart Plaza in Hyannis. Support and honor our deployed troops, veterans, wounded warriors, and Gold Star heroes. Don't miss the 2 o'clock honor ceremony for Vietnam veterans. Take the Cape Flyer train. Free that day for all veterans. Donate supplies for care packages. Tons of activities for the whole family. Sunday, May 28th. For more, click CapeCodForTheTroops.com.
Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey spoke to a crowd at Cape Cod Community College Tuesday night in a town hall-style meeting that ranged from attention to the opiate crisis to environmental protection and concerns over utility company Eversource's planned rate hike. Healey began her day at Centerville Elementary, where she announced funding that will pay for opiate prevention and education for our younger students.
Now especially. So we're really working on all fronts, from getting Narcan in the hands of more first responders to working around access to treatment and mental health parity. But believe you me, I am so firmly of the view that not only have we got to do everything we can to help families today, those struggling with addiction, those in need, we have got to do everything we can to help today's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders be all they can be. So
but the biggest debate of the evening surrounded the state's gun laws.
I heard your statistics on the guns and you know, the people getting murdered and what have you. You had some good statistics there. Can you repeat them real quick?
The statistics that I use are these. You know, if you just look at day to day, the average over the course of a year, 90 Americans a day will die at the hand of a gun.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Another 200 are injured.
Yeah, I got this.
And
yeah,
and the latest figure I have, Paul, for those deaths, 62% are suicides, and I think those are the statistics I use. But those are the ones I usually talk about.
Okay, good, and that's tragic. That absolutely tragic. Let's talk about the law-abiding citizens causing most of these, though. Legal gun owners causing these. How many murders in the past 10 years committed by long gun? Modern sporting rifles, which to you would be assault weapons. Is it 2 or 3? It's one of the numbers, and your team can check that. 10 years. How many modern sporting rifles have killed, been used for murders in this state?
Healey ended the evening encouraging the audience to participate in local government. Speaking of, Harwich town meeting was held this week, one of many held across Cape Cod. Voters in Harwich approved a $9 million spending plan that will help mitigate wastewater issues in town. The initiative includes an interconnection with the town of Chatham and a sewering plan for East Harwich. Voters must approve the funding at the ballot box. Town election takes place on May 16th. The Mercy Otis Warren Cape Cod Woman of the Year Award is given annually to a Cape Cod woman who exemplifies the traits of leadership in the community and has made a significant contribution to the arts, education, business, community involvement, embracing the ideals of patriotism. This year's recipient is Dolores Holden DeLuz of Hyannis. She's an actor, a storyteller, a poet, a singer, a songwriter, a knowledgeable chronicler of African American and Cape Verdean life and history on Cape Cod. Last year's recipient, Ann Williams, will present Dolores DeLuz with the award on June 5th during a ceremony at Tales of Cape Cod. A list of 40 young people from the Cape Cod area who have made strides to positively contribute to the community are being recognized for their hard work. The annual Cape and Plymouth Business 40 Under 40 honoree list has been announced, spotlighting the region's top young leaders who excel in their industry and show dynamic leadership. All the honorees will be recognized at a special event taking place at the Cape Codder Resort and Spa on June 22nd. Congratulations to all of the winners, and thank you for your contributions to our community. Up next, the Cape Wildlife Center in Comaquid is working to stay afloat.
Every single one of us has someone, whether we know this or not, we have someone in our life who we love, who we admire, who we respect, we know, who is a survivor of sexual violence or domestic violence. Every single one of us here in this room.
The reason I took the pledge is I'm a father of 3 daughters. I'm a chief probation officer in Barnstable. I think it's incredibly important that we, as men, realize our responsibilities, and taking the pledge is part of that.
So I take the pledge because guys play a very important part in changing the culture of domestic violence.
It's my responsibility as a man to look out for not only women, but children. And I am responsible for my brother's actions.
I took the pledge because, well, let me just say, first of all, I'm not a father, I'm not a grandfather, but I am an uncle. And I think as an uncle, I have a responsibility to my nephews to be able to show them a proper way of treating women, respecting women, and just overall being a figure, a model, role model, to be able to say this is how you should treat women and this is how you should be as a man.
And to do my part to assist men in taking the pledge to end domestic violence.
I take the pledge because it's so important that all of us as men recognize that we have work to do. There's far too many incidents of violence, sexual violence, and other types of violence made against women. And we need to be doing more to talking to our young, especially our young boys, young men, and making sure that we're changing our culture to try to make sure that in the future this continues to decrease until it doesn't happen at all.
I take the pledge because violence against men or women is wrong. We need it to stop.
Thousands of wild animals on Cape Cod need help and treatment after they become sick, injured, or abandoned. The Cape Wildlife Center is fighting to stay afloat after losing funding last year. The Cape Wildlife Center in Comaquid is up and running for at least the next few months, but if funding doesn't come through, they won't be able to care for the thousands of wild animals that need help during the year. The Humane Society cut funding last year. A new organization is now operating the center.
So the mission here at Cape Wildlife Center is to treat sick, injured, and orphan wild animals, and in the process of doing that, educate students of all ages about natural history, biology, ecology, and environmental science. So we treat roughly 225 different species of wildlife. This year we expect to treat about 2,000 patients, all said and done.
Patients like these baby opossums that were recovered from their mother's marsupial pouch after she was killed by a car.
And we're feeding these guys about 5 times a day. And as they become big and strong, we can back down on the amount of formula we're giving and wean them onto solid food. We will keep them until they are old enough to survive on their own in the wild. It's about probably a couple months. And then when they're the right size and weight and eating on their own and maintaining their own weight, we think it's good enough time to let them go. Weather permitting, we'll find a good habitat for these guys.
We officially opened our doors on March 1st of this year. And we came in after the Humane Society of the United States decided they were no longer able to operate this facility. So the New England Wildlife Center, the Pegasus Foundation, and the Friends of Cape Wildlife all came together. And to date, 10 weeks later, we have secured the property for a year. We have hired a vet staff who is here 6 days a week. We have techs and volunteers and students with us. So we have the facility, we have the talent, we have the community buy-in, but what we really need is funding to continue operating. It's important for us to help wildlife for a number of reasons. The first reason being that, well, it's ethically the right thing to do. About 95% of the patients we see only end up in our hospital because they have come into contact with humans in one way or another. Be that being hit by a car, or flying into a window, or becoming sort of incidental contact, people doing lawn work or yard work, or things like rat poison and lead poisoning that are just sort of peripheral to people, you know, living in the same habitats and sharing these borders. So if you see an injured animal, I'll caution you with 2 things. The first thing is do not touch. And the second thing would give us a call, 508-362-0111. We operate a wildlife hotline. You can always call us for information 7 days a week. And either we can sort of coach you through the process of how to deal with that wild animal, put you in contact with the right organizations and entities that will come and get that animal otherwise. Or in many cases, it is you're seeing a healthy animal and maybe you haven't seen it before. And we can sort of coach you on what's normal, what's not normal. And together we'll come to a solution that is, you know, good for everyone.
Cape Wildlife is seeking grant funding and expanding its fee-for-service programs and educational outreach in hopes of increasing revenue, but they still need support from the community in order to keep the doors open to help wildlife for years to come. And you can learn more about the Cape Wildlife Center by visiting capewildlifecenter.com. Engineers, artists, scientists, and crafters, well, what do they all have in common? They're all makers. They gathered over the weekend at Mashpee High School to show off their stuff at the annual Cape Cod Mini Maker Faire.
The 4th annual Cape Cod Mini Maker Faire took place last weekend at Mashpee High School. The fair highlights the Cape's DIY culture along with science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
It's absolutely wonderful. I love the fact that everybody's bringing new things to the Maker Faire. I think that we have a lot more schools involved. The robotics competition is absolutely tremendous.
I came last year for the first time, and I was amazed by how much diversity of craft and making there was represented. And this year, it's even better than last year. I love seeing how many families and kids and people of all ages who are coming here and doing things from robotics to virtual reality to making things like jewelry, pottery, or even old-time loom making. I mean, it really ranges. So there's always lots of really fun things to do.
The fair attracted over 1,000 attendees and over 60 makers participated. There were 26 robotics teams from 10 different schools.
This is the 2nd year that the Workforce Investment Board and the Youth Council have sponsored the Maker Faire, and we feel that it's a valuable resource for us because so many of our schools participate in this activity.
A two-wheeled tour will circle through the town of Barnstable this Sunday. The Tour de Barnstable, a 38-mile scenic bike ride that visits all 7 villages, will kick off at 8 o'clock Sunday morning at Azleton Park in Hyannis. The event is presented by the Greater Hyannis Chamber of Commerce, the Barnstable Land Trust, and Seasports Cyclery and Outdoors. It begins and ends at Azleton Park, that's right at Hyannis Harbor. Parts of the route follow the South Coast bike route on comfortable, quiet secondary roads. This anchor will be kicking off her bike season this Sunday. Visit semcsports.com to learn more and to register. In other cycling news, Yarmouth police and students rode bikes together this morning as part of the Massachusetts Safe Rides to School program. 23 students and 3 teachers from Mattakees Middle School rode 5.1 miles early this morning from Yarmouth Port to the school. Special thanks to Mattakees principal Ann Nell, physical education teacher Stephanie Wright, and Bike Zone of Yarmouth for making it happen. Coming up Friday on Cape Media News, the Cape Cod Commission is launching a study of the Cape's housing needs. Cape Cod Regional Technical High School seniors show off their projects, and Little Fenway will be dedicated this Saturday. That's all Friday on Cape Media News. Stay up to date with us online at capemedia.org, and if you have a news tip, questions, or ideas, you can email us at news@capemedia.org. With Cape Media News, I'm Sarah Colvin.